Welcome to Entrepreneur State of Mind. I'm your host, Dr. Dale Caldwell. Thank you for joining us this week for another amazing guest. Diana, how are you?
I'm very well.
Good, good. She has a company called Higher High. So Diana McElroy is one of the most, I knew very little about cannabis, but we had a chance last week to talk, and there's no one I've learned that really explains things better than you do. And so, but first I'd like to start about where people are from and so on. So where were you born? Where did you grow up? And how did you get into this business?
So I was born in Poland, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I came here when I was 7 years old.
Are you fluent in language?
Yes,
Polish?
so English is my second language.
Oh, wow.
I'm an ESL student.
Okay.
I started school in the Bronx at PS 105.
Okay.
Not speaking a word of English.
Wow. And what age, how old were you when you came?
7.
7, okay.
7.
Okay.
And then we moved, typical like immigrants, we moved every 2 years trying to find our spot in the country. So went from Bronx to Queens to Long Island. Wow. And then ended up in 6th grade in Denville, New Jersey.
Okay, okay.
Yep. Yep.
Now what did your parents do?
So I was adopted by family, and then I was brought over for that reason.
Oh, really?
Yes,
oh, okay.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. So
wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then it ended up in Denville. Went to St. Mary's.
Okay.
Then went to Morris Catholic for 2 years.
Okay.
And then from there, I went to Morris Knolls for 2 years.
Okay.
And County College for 2 years. I happen to have like a 2-year record.
There's a 2-year pattern. Yeah.
Exactly. My husband's my longest commitment of almost 30 years. And then went to Fairleigh Dickinson. I'm actually an alumni from Fairleigh Dickinson.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yep.
Yeah, it's great. And as you know, I run the Rothman Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Fairleigh Dickinson University, which is why we connected, because we're really looking at every aspect of entrepreneurship. And so, so what were your first jobs kind of out of college, and how did you get it to this space?
Oh, I've done everything from house cleaning on down. But my first job out of college was, I ended up at Newport Capital. Okay. I laughed because I worked for 5 different firms, and I never left my seat. We kept getting, our division kept getting purchased out by Tyco, CIT.
Interesting. Yes.
And,
okay.
Yeah. And I just happened as a temp right out of college because I graduated mid-year.
Okay.
And they offered me an IT position.
Okay.
I knew nothing about IT, but they liked my personality and wanted me part of the group.
Wonderful.
So I was there for 5 years, and then one of the partners actually started a firm and pulled me along to his firm for another 5 years. So I ended up in the finance industry for 10 years.
For 10 years.
Yep.
And so, so today we're going to talk and learn a lot about cannabis.
Yep.
And so, but you're an entrepreneur. You have the entrepreneur state of mind, which is why you're here. And so, so how did you get into Higher High and cannabis?
Well, in 2018, I kind of looked at, I did take years off to be a stay-at-home mom. And when you do that, you kind of lose your track in, you know,
in the traditional
exactly, your career kind of gets diverted. Right. So 2018, I looked at the different industries, and I had never picked my jobs. They kind of picked me. I've been very fortunate. Opportunities found me. And I said to my husband, you know what, cannabis is the next thing that's coming down the pike, and I see that it's starting to ramp up in New Jersey.
And what year was this? When was this?
That was 2018.
18, okay,
yep.
18, okay.
And I started calling around, started, you know, just getting feelers of how do I break into this industry? And I didn't know a lot, but I knew that it interested me. And someone sent me a little article that a farm down the street from my house was turning into a grow.
Oh, really?
An MSO bought it, and they were going to
turn MSO it for the
for multi-state operator.
Multi-state, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because this is going to be 101 because most people have these stereotypes about marijuana and cannabis, and so we're going to, by the time we're done, you're going to know more than you ever thought you'd know about cannabis.
So I went to the town hall meeting, and as did some of the local people from the area, and they were very upset about having a cannabis company come in. I was very excited. So I waited for the executives to leave the building. I followed them and asked them if they were going to be hiring. And they hired me to be a consultant for the first year because, and so my role was to just go out in the community and understand what people's hang-ups were. And understand what their fears and their trepidation over the product was, and educate myself.
Right. What did you learn? What you did that? What did you learn? Because many people who are watching probably have those same fears.
So it was funny because I went into cannabis as a business because I saw an opportunity to, grow. It's a new industry, but I became a patient advocate through my understanding because I started hearing stories. The more I immersed myself into it, the only thing I knew about cannabis was back in my college days where I didn't like it. Because I didn't like the effects on it, on my body. I smoked too much. I partook, college kids use it in a different way sometimes. And I decided to educate myself, and I became really involved with patients. And the more I learned from the patients and the aspect of what benefits, I became a patient advocate. And so a year later, when we finally had product in the ground, Terracent, the company I worked for, said, what would you like to do within our company? And I said, I want to be community outreach.
Now, is Terracent the company that hired you?
Yes.
Okay.
So they're a Canadian company that opened a division of Terracent NJ in New Jersey.
Okay.
So I became their community outreach person, which allowed me to go out into the community, allowed me to not only deal with the towns where we had, we opened 2 dispensaries, one in Phillipsburg and one in Maplewood.
Okay. And so a dispensary does what? What is
a dispensary? Right now, they're all medical based because New Jersey is just medical. So you have to get a recommendation from a doctor. And you get a medical card from the DOH, Department of Health. And it allows you to go into a dispensary and purchase your medication. But I know you've heard that adult use is coming down the pike. So,
so let's go, because I want to walk people through this so they really understand. So when you buy it, what do you buy? Are you buying, what does it look like? What are you buying when you go into the dispensary?
So it depends.
For medical?
So you could buy tincture, which is like a liquid form, condensed liquid form.
Oh, really?
Yes.
You
could add it to your food. You could add it to your drinks. You could buy smoke flower. You could buy edibles. Right now, the only thing allowed in New Jersey is soft lozenges. Other states allow different forms of consumption. And
like cough drops.
Like cough drops, yes.
Really?
Yes.
And that can have medicinal benefits. So those stuff, you don't have to have a joint. They're not selling joints at the place.
Well, you can buy a pre-roll, because I will tell you for myself, I'm going to out myself. I use cannabis as a patient because I have anxiety, and I also use it as a form of a sleep aid.
Oh, really?
Yes, and for me, you have to understand the different forms of consumption and how they affect you. Flower, which is the old-fashioned smoking, the onset is very quick, and it only lasts for about, let's say, an hour.
So the duration is short. The onset is quick and short.
Exactly. So I like it for that reason, because I could understand and I know how to control it. Some people like edibles. Edibles can take a much longer time to absorb into your system. They're going through the liver, and they can, sometimes it can take about an hour and a half to even
to really get into.
Exactly.
Like an allergy medicine, it takes like 2 hours before it gets into
until you fully have the absorption.
And that's why I really wanted you on the show, because you really explain. Everybody says cannabis. Well, cannabis is 100 different things, and there are ways to use it. And you really taught me that last week. And it's like, wow, I didn't realize that it's not one thing.
It is not one thing. It is a medication, and people utilize it as a medication. We're asking for different forms of consumption because in Pennsylvania, for example, our company was multi-state. We have suppositories because there are patients that can't swallow anything. There are children who use it for multiple reasons, whether it be they're being treated for cancer or epilepsy. In New Jersey, there's 17 qualifying conditions. In Pennsylvania, there's more. So every state is very specific.
Interesting, and very different.
Very different.
Now, what about, and we'll go to the biggest question, the addiction. Can you get addicted to cannabis?
So it's not. I'm going to speak honestly. I have seen people who lean on it very hard. And I think if you have that personality, it's...
Same with alcohol, right? Same thing. You lean on alcohol to get, when you're feeling down,
That's exactly. But the difference is, like, cannabis works with your endocannabinoid system, which was discovered in the 90s, and it really is your body system for regulating itself.
And it's called the
endocannabinoid system.
Endocannabinoid. And everyone has a different one. Responds differently to this.
Exactly. All mammals have endocannabinoid systems. And what cannabis does is it really unlocks the key. It's like a key mechanism to unlock the system.
Okay.
And that's why it puts you in a homogeneous state where you just feel relaxed. You know, I think when we were talking, I kind of explained it almost like the first glass of wine, where you just feel very calm.
Right. Right.
And the same with cannabis. It's like, you know, you have to understand how it affects your body.
Right,
And it is
right.
a dosing journey.
Right.
Like people go into a dispensary and they, you know, I want to try this and I want to try this and I want to try this because this is the effect I'm looking for, whether it's, for me, it's insomnia.
Right.
Not every product's going to work the same.
Right,
and,
right.
and not everybody's body is going to react.
It's going to react the same way.
Yep.
In fact, just recently, you know, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, you know, was saying, you know, when I take it, I feel clear. I have a clear, and you're the only other person I heard, because in college you hear the people who are taking it, and they have anything but clear minds. So it's a stereotype.
Right. It is a stereotype, but it was also the way I consumed in college.
Right, right.
So if I'm going to out myself, and in college, we smoked blunts and we just sat around. And I had one crazy summer where I experimented, and I hated it.
Right,
because
right.
I like to be social and I like to talk, and I'd sit there and drool.
And just kind of veg out and eat.
And I realized that was not for me. I found it again as an adult, and I found it as a medicine as an adult. And I found that, like, for me, 1 hit, 2 hits, and I'm good. And to your friend's point, it does clear the cobwebs for me.
Yeah, that's what you were saying. And, and the other thing about you is, you know, again, if you can see him, she's high energy. You know, so many of the stereotype or they're just low energy and so mellow and half asleep, and so I like the fact that you know, you're medically using it medically, but you have high energy.
Well, because I'm not medicated all the time.
Right, right.
And for me, the way cannabis works with my system is it revs me.
Right, right.
So like I will utilize the medication and then go and then teach a yoga class, or I will go for a hike, because that's the way it responds with my body.
Is that the dosage that allows you to be more energetic, or what is it a certain type of cannabis?
It's just the way my body reacts to it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's the way my body, and it's funny because indica is supposed to make you sleepy.
Right.
My body doesn't react to cannabis that way.
Really?
And people are like, oh, sativa is more uplifting and indica is more. For me, for whatever reason, my endocannabinoid system and just the way I respond to the medication, it revs me.
Right.
But then because of being active, it does help with my insomnia.
Right.
Because, you know, I'll go for a 2-hour walk, come home, and I'm exhausted, and I can sleep better.
Okay, interesting.
Yep.
And you know, the thing when people talk about steroids is that not that steroids make you better, but steroids help you train better.
Yep.
Now, can cannabis do that? Can that help you?
100%. 100%.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
So I'll give you an example. I went to the MJ Biz, which is the biggest cannabis conference in like the country.
Okay. And what's it called? It's called
MJ Biz.
MJ Biz.
Yes,
okay.
and it's in Vegas.
Oh, it's in Vegas. All these conferences are in Vegas.
Yes.
So let me know. We're going to take a commercial break, short commercial break, because I want to hear this, and we'll be right back after the commercial break and continue this fascinating discussion.
Black Friday used to mean long lines and deals gone in a flash. That was Black Friday then. This is Black Friday now. This year, Target has Black Friday deals all November, with new deals each week, in-store and on Target.com. So you can get all the Black Friday savings without all the Black Friday stress. No matter how you shop, it's Black Friday now at Target.
Is everything ready for tomorrow?
Planning, shopping, carrying, washing, slicing, dodging, chopping, weeping, mashing, grating. And now, what oil are you going to use to cook all that effort? Introducing Bertolli Cooking Olive Oil. Ideal for cooking. Bertolli, elevate your every meal.
Welcome back to Entrepreneur State of Mind. We're having a wonderful conversation about cannabis, and we were talking about the largest conference in the country around this business, and it's in Vegas, of course. And so talk to me about that.
So the reason I was bringing it up is you asked, you know, can it help with your
training,
endurance and training?
Yeah.
So I microdosed when I was there, which means that I lost 6 pounds
Wow.
because I
Wow.
was going. I was not going to miss any opportunity. I was paying for my own way.
Right,
You know, as an
right,
entrepreneur,
right,
when you're
exactly.
financing,
You wanted to earn every dollar.
You wanted,
Yeah.
and I wanted to be at every networking event. And so I would microdose, and what that would do is alleviate the pain that my body was going
Right,
through.
right.
Because I was really, I mean, ask my husband, I was waking up at 6 and going to bed at 3:30 in the morning,
Wow.
because a lot of the events, the parties afterwards were really where the networking was happening and where
right.
you were meeting the people. So cannabis does help the inflammation. It helps, you know, the pain that you can go through.
Right.
Yeah, and microdosing is just, you know, taking a hit and not feeling messed up. It just clears the cobwebs,
Right.
and you're able to power through.
And now, how do you microdose? What format?
So
do you
for
use?
me, a flower. For me, it's
For
flower.
smoking.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So when you say
Yep.
flower, I'm
Yes.
learning these terms.
Yes.
And so the
Flower is like the original form
Right,
of,
okay,
yes,
okay, you
yes,
call it flower.
Yes. And so instead of smoking a joint,
Right.
I take a hit and that's
and it's
yeah,
done.
And it's done.
And it would be the same as one puff.
Yes. Yep.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
And that has enough. So one of the things I was talking in the break is marijuana. That name seems to be going out, and now it's cannabis. Is there a difference between marijuana and cannabis?
So that's the funny part. We in Pennsylvania have to call it marijuana.
Right. Oh, really?
In New Jersey, marijuana is illegal,
Right.
but cannabis is legal.
Interesting.
Yes. So every
But it refers
state-
to the same thing.
It's the same product.
Interesting.
But
Wow.
it's how the states have adopted
Right.
their understanding and
Right.
their rules for the plant.
Interesting.
Yes.
So we've talked a lot about the legal version of it. We've talked about medical marijuana. New Jersey, has approved to have the recreational.
Yep.
And so tell us what does that mean? What are the rules around that, and who can use that, and what's
So we
going on?
don't know what the rules and regs are yet.
Okay.
They're being written. We're
Okay.
hoping to have them out in the next couple of months. They are following the Massachusetts program,
Okay.
which I have been to dispensaries in Massachusetts,
Okay.
and I've been to dispensaries in Nevada, just other states, and
So recreational is legal in Massachusetts.
yes,
It is,
yes.
okay.
So, for example, in New Jersey, I do know that patients will not be paying taxes on it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. There's 12 cultivators right now in New Jersey. In order for them to convert to, and I don't like recreational. Recreational sounds.
Right.
Sounds. I like adult use.
Adult use. Okay.
Because
good.
as a
Okay, we'll use
parent,
that, right.
alcohol is adult use.
Right.
Cannabis is adult use.
Okay, good.
Unless you're a child who is using it, and then you have a caregiver, whether it be a grandparent or a parent who's administering the
Right.
product. So when we talk about adult use is going to be for 21 and over.
Okay.
And they can go into a dispensary and they can
Okay.
purchase the product. And the 12 current cultivators have to prove that they will have enough product to provide for their medicals first,
Right.
and then for adult use.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
And so those 12 were picked by the state.
They were the original 12.
Okay.
And now we have more licenses coming out, and there's going to be more cultivators in the state, capped at 37.
So you're a cultivator. What does that mean? What do you do? Do you grow?
You do, and I had the advantage
Okay.
of one of the few people in New Jersey that I had the advantage of working in a grow.
Right, okay.
So we grew the product. When I
Right.
say we, I meant the people
Right,
on
right,
the
right,
farm.
at the farm.
And these are, let me tell you, these are really, really highly skilled individuals,
Yeah.
because it's not an easy product to grow.
Oh, interesting. Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
it's not it's very it's temperamental, and you're growing it like a medication, so you have
Right.
to make sure that there's no, contaminants in the building.
Right.
It's very, at least our
very
grow,
organic, huh?
It's very organic, and
Yeah.
also very highly clean.
Right,
We
right.
would have to wear PPE to walk into
Oh,
where
really?
the plants
Oh,
are.
really?
Yes, because we're growing a medication.
Yeah,
And
interesting.
I do have to say, my company took really high standards in how they treated the plant.
Okay,
Yep.
so you grow it. I have bamboo trees in my back, and they grow like anything. So
Oh,
it's
yeah, they're
bamboos,
invasive.
Yeah. So all right, so you grow it, and then
Yes.
from the grow, what's the process?
You grow it, you harvest it, so you
Okay.
cut it down, and then you dry it.
So harvesting is, what do you do to the plant? You just
cut it.
You just cut it.
You
just
cut it. You
and-
cut it, and you take these huge, and I wish I do on my camera roll. I can show you later. They're these huge plants, and then they take them and they take all the leaves off.
Okay.
You know that five, yeah.
Right, the five, yeah.
Yeah. You take those off and you actually hang it up and you dry it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, and from there, they either take them, there's so many different forms you could do. You could flash freeze it
Right.
and use it in a lab
Okay.
for manufacturing.
Okay.
So that's where you would get the edibles. That's
Right.
where,
Oh, I see. Okay.
yes, and they
Okay.
actually make an oil out of it.
Okay.
Or you can use it and they debud it,
Okay.
and that's the flour.
Oh, okay.
Yep, and they
Okay.
put it into jars, they measure, everything is, very technical and very organized.
But it's always dried first?
It's always dried first.
You know,
Yeah.
I always wonder how people come up with these things. Like, who
Yep.
was the first person to say, hey, let me dry this plant? And, you know.
I would love to know that too,
Yeah.
But it was considered a medication for many, many years. It was sold in pharmacies
Yeah.
for many years,
Interesting.
Yeah, there's
Interesting.
until they decided on the war on drugs.
Right.
In the US, for example, certain farmers were mandated to grow hemp. Hemp is a form of cannabis.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
And
okay.
so a lot of towns that have the word hemp in them,
Right.
Hampstead Heath, hemp,
Right.
they were actually areas that grew hemp.
I was
Yep.
in South Africa way back in the 80s, and hemp was legal. They were talking about
Yep.
hemp and why it was that apparently it impacted some of the businesses or something, and so there was some political
Yes.
politics is at the heart of stuff. All right, so you harvest the plant, they develop it. Do these same companies have stores? Are they the ones who can have
Yes.
stores, or can
So-
anybody else have a store?
So the way our company it was called vertically integrated.
Right,
So
okay,
we were
right,
allowed
okay.
to, our license involved having a grow, a lab, a facility, a distribution center.
Right.
So we were allowed to have everything. Now the state is breaking it up and they're giving out different licenses.
Okay,
yes, for different. So you could.
So the 12, but they'll produce it, but they'll be able to have a store.
Yes, so
Based
we had dispensaries.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
and the store that you speak of is called a dispensary.
Dispensary, okay,
Yes.
okay.
Now going forward, they're breaking it up to different categories, different classes of licenses.
Okay.
And you could either be a delivery, you could be a grow facility, you could be a distributor,
Okay.
you could be a
So
wholesaler.
a lot of jobs.
Yes,
are,
a lot of jobs.
So,
a lot
so now what about the banking? Now I understand
Yeah.
that because it's federally not legal. How do you deal with the banking?
So even for myself, even though I'm plant touching company,
Right.
I am a PR/consulting firm within the space. Even for me, I had to disclose to my federal credit union, who I've been with for 30 years, hey, I'm working in the cannabis space.
Oh, interesting.
And it
Okay.
was very funny because the lady said to me, oh, okay, hold on, let me call you back. I don't know if we
Right,
could take
right,
you.
right.
And she called me back and she said, thank you for disclosing that you will be working with cannabis,
Uh-huh.
because they themselves are learning the rules.
Right.
So it is federally still classified Schedule I drug, which is
Right.
crazy to me.
Right.
And the banks, some of the big banks are doing it with, subsidiaries
Right,
are
right.
allowing the banking,
Right.
but a lot of your smaller credit unions are more open to it.
Right. No, and so I have a nonprofit foundation, and so it's a potential opportunity for foundations, right? Because
Yeah.
to give some of the money back to the community and other
Yes.
things, so
Yep.
foundations that are actually doing good stuff in the community could be an opportunity to get money,
Yep.
money for that. And
Yeah.
so, do you think what's the prospect for the federal change federally, since more and more states are doing this?
So it's funny, it depends who you ask. I think it's going to be federally legalized, and I've heard many arguments on both sides where some of the people who have been legacy growers, or we used to refer to them as black market, which is completely kind of termed derogatory now.
Right,
yeah,
right.
because it did have social impact,
Right.
on black and brown people. So
Right, right.
we're pulling away from that term and we're calling it legacy. They don't want to be federally legalized.
Right.
Some patients don't want it to be federally legalized because they're afraid that the federal government is going to allow all the big pharma companies to
Right,
come in,
right.
Big tobacco, and
Right.
take all the profits.
Right.
So, do I think it's going to be federally legalized? I think so eventually.
Right.
I mean, we even had Judge Thompson, the most the most conservative judge on the Supreme Court, say, I don't understand why this is still illegal.
Right,
You know,
right.
so it's definitely, the viewpoint is definitely changing. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting, because one of my biggest fights is, running Entrepreneurial Institute, doing these shows, is that the big companies, because they have money, pay off, through lobbyists, and so they get all the and they're killing entrepreneurship in this country. I'm one of the things I've advocated is that if every politician in America had to have made payroll, then this would be a very different country, because they understand how important entrepreneurs are to this economy, but how hard it is, and the government is just making it harder. And there's some fear that I hadn't really thought about it. If it becomes federally legal, then the big companies will squeeze out the little ones, like they do with everything else. And it'll be bad for consumers, it'll be bad for the economy, it'll be bad for jobs.
So it might offer more jobs into the space. I think what's going to happen is we're going to have almost like I equate it to beer, okay? You have the Coors, the Budweiser, and then you have these microbreweries that have popped up, and they have a much better quality product, and people are willing to pay a little more, and the same can go for cannabis, because people who are connoisseurs and really, understand the product, they want that craft cannabis. They want that cannabis that was, treated with tender loving care, and they want, the higher strains, the more hard to find strains. So
Well, again, I can't wait for the day to have legislation that says it's only for companies with 50 or fewer employees for various products, and so that would be a level playing field.
So New Jersey is allowing for micro licenses, and that's one of the things that they said is you could only have 10 employees, you could only have a space this big, you have to be 51%. The management has to live in the town. So they've made it very specific, because what they're hoping to do is, number one, help social equity applicants, and number two, they're trying to make sure that the little guy has a foothold in the space.
And especially now as it's getting going. Because if you're not there at the beginning, you're going to be squeezed out. So, Diana, this has been great. We're at the end of time, so it goes very, very quickly.
It does.
But I've learned a lot. I hope, and I know my audience has learned a lot about this space, and it's not as much to be scared of as some people will make it to be. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks for watching Entrepreneur State of Mind, and we will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.